Can you imagine we've just been like quietly letting you do the wrong name the whole time?
Just laughing at you the whole time.
Guy, he's not qualified for this job at all. What's good? Thank you so much for tuning in to another episode of The Newest Olympian. My name is Mike Schubert. I'm the titular Newest Olympian. I'm a 30-year-old man who never read the Percy Jackson books as a kid, but I'm reading them now as an adult on a quest to determine if this is a book series that we've all been sleeping on. And I'm not on this quest alone. I am joined by two co-hosts of the Camp Half Pod podcast. It's Manasa and Erin. How's it going, folks?
Hi.
It's going great. Hello.
We're excited to be here.
I'm excited to have you here. Just in case folks have not listened to your podcast, do you want to one at a time say, hello, this is my name, this is what my voice sounds like, and then people can contextualize who is speaking throughout the episode?
Of course, I'm Manasa. This is what I sound like, so keep an eye out for that.
I'm Erin. I think I have the slightly squeakier voice. That's how I identify it when I listen.
Look, as long as you are recognizing yourself, that's the key.
Yeah.
So before we get into the chapters, which we will be finishing up chapter 2 and doing all of chapter 3 of The Titan's Curse, I would love to hear from each of you what your history is with Percy Jackson, when you started reading the books, how that led you to starting a podcast together, etc.
Oh man. Okay, well, this is a fun story. I read the books first when I was like probably 8 or so when they came out. And I read them because I had an older brother, so my dad got them for him, and I stole them from him, and I became extremely obsessed. I think it's just like it lined up that Percy was a bit older than me, so he was cooler. And I really loved the adventure of it. It made me really obsessed with Greek mythology. It became my personality. And then I met Erin when we were also 12.
Amazing!
Yeah.
So she's known that I've been obsessed with this series for our entire friendship, essentially.
Yeah, I have a similar, I don't have an older brother, but I discovered them probably when I was like 9 or 10 or something in elementary school, read them all. I was obsessed. I really wanted to be Annabeth. I don't know if I've told you this story, Manasa, but I made like a secret folder in my room, like, printer paper in a binder that was my architecture folder. And for like a year of my life, I was like, I'm going to be an architect. And I designed like a building, like that was probably like a brick. And then I'm not an architect. That dream died about a year into it. But yeah. And then we decided to start the podcast like a year and a half ago, I think.
Yeah.
I had just read, because I read the second series, Heroes of Olympus, as an adult. I hadn't read that as a teen or child. I don't know. I was just sleeping on it. And so I read that series and had been texting Manasa about it because she had read it a while ago. And then we just decided to spread our love for Percy Jackson with all the other people.
Yeah.
Amazing. That is fantastic. Now, I promise I'm not trying to be rude here, but for context, how old are the two of you? Just so I can get a sense of where we fall in terms of when did it make sense when you read the books and all that?
We both are turning or have turned 26 this year.
Okay. All right. Nice. All right. Yeah. Okay. This is good. I'm trying to get lots of different ages of folks, and I feel like you're right in the sweet spot of me being 30, a little older than the folks from Seaweed Brain, so we're hitting that nice middle ground. 26 is a fun one. You're enough years out of college to have enough money to do cool things, and also you know what annoying bars to avoid. So yay, 26 is a fun one.
True.
True. We're like that nice millennial Gen Z cusp.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, we have student debt like every millennial, and we can speak Gen Z, so.
Wow, look at that. You get the best of both worlds, just like Hannah Montana. Yeah, congratulations. But maybe too young to fully get the Hannah Montana reference. Okay, anyway.
Oh, no.
Oh, okay, good.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, no, that was big.
But have you watched episodes of it, though?
Yeah.
Oh,
okay,
yeah.
Great.
Oh, yeah.
Oh,
yeah.
good.
Don't worry.
I watched that series finale like when it came out, like it was a thing.
Yeah.
When she just lingers at the window.
Oh, yeah.
And blows the set a goodbye kiss. Mwah, art. All right. Well, speaking of art, let's talk about Artemis. We're going to get that later in the chapter, but let's continue where we left off in Percy Jackson and the Titan's Curse. Where we last left our heroes, Percy got hit with an invisible force, and I am foolish for not recognizing what it is, because the way this portion of the chapter begins after the line break is Percy saying that Annabeth's move was a smart one, and I wrote in my notes, oh, it's Annabeth. Of course, that makes sense. An invisible force. She loves to do this, so I feel foolish for not picking up on that immediately. So she plows into Percy and the D'Angelos so that they hit the ground and avoid Thorne's first wave of missiles. And then I also remembered, oh, right, the chapter title is that he's going to have a missile launcher. Cool, cool, cool. So everything is just falling into place right off the bat here. So Thorne being confused allows for Thalia and Grover to attack him from behind. And Thalia is rocking a huge spear that, instead of turning into a pen like Riptide does, it turns into a canister of mace, which I thought was simultaneously cool and sad that we live in a world where all women and young girls should carry around mace. It's a terrifying world we live in.
Very true.
Yeah, it is.
She also has Aegis, which is very cool. And narrator Percy describes it as having the head of Medusa molded into it in bronze, and though it doesn't turn people into stone, it is so grotesque that many would panic and run just at the sight of it. And when Thorne does see it, he winces and growls. So he's not vibing with her shield choice. Thalia goes in for a spear jab, and she says, for Zeus, which I thought was interesting because I don't know if I'm misremembering the introduction to Thalia, but I feel like she wasn't the biggest fan of her dad, or at least that's what we were told.
No.
So I found it strange that she would be championing him with her attack.
I feel like she knows her powers come from Zeus, so she's like, listen, guy who gives me powers, I'm calling out to you.
Yeah.
Or maybe she just has like your typical, she hates her dad, but she loves her dad. You know what I mean? It's complicated.
Yeah.
It sucks for all of them because they're like, they all kind of hate their parents, but they're forced to worship them and sacrifice things to them and like call upon them for their powers. It's some toxic stuff going on right there.
Yeah, and then their parents are inherently not allowed to help them lest they break the ancient laws or whatever. So it's a tricky balance for sure. So she says for Zeus, and then Thorne is able to swat the spear aside, though. And his hand then turns into an orange paw with claws, and he slashes at Thalia, who blocks it with Aegis. And then she rolls backward onto her feet. This did have me go down a slight rabbit hole where I Googled, when are you supposed to use backward or backwards? And I got a very unhelpful answer, which is basically that backward is when it's the adverb, unless you're using British English, and then you use backwards. So I don't really know. It seems like one of those nobody should really care thing. But I was curious, so I Googled it, and Google was mildly helpful. Now, the helicopter, which was approaching, is getting closer, and Thorne fires a second wave of missiles at Thalia. And now Percy can see how he is shooting these spikes. He's got a leathery, scorpion-like tail with spikes all sticking out of it. And then I, because I have seen Pixar's Onward, wrote, is this a manticore in my notes? And we shall see.
Yes, we shall.
So the missiles deflect off of Aegis, but the force still knocks Thalia down. This reminded me of someone wearing a bulletproof vest where, yes, you're okay, but it still hurts and knocks the wind out of you. And Grover then plays his reed pipes in a song that sounds like a sea shanty, so huge with the kids on TikTok.
Oh, yeah.
And weeds begin to grow and tangle up Thorne's legs. And I think this is very cool. It reminds me of when you level up your D&D character. I've recently been playing some D&D, and I always find it fun when you've leveled up, you get a new spell, and then you use it for the first time. I feel like Grover, since we've last seen him be in any sort of fight, has leveled up because not only is he playing the reed pipes to control plants, which we've seen mainly with him playing songs like the YMCA that make the plants sad, now he is actively using them as a defense mechanism. And I think that that's really cool.
Yeah, for sure. Because like normally he just like kind of freaks out and isn't super helpful, but he's the emotional support. So it's nice to see him get the ability to like actively participate.
It's like a throwback to him only being able to play Hilary Duff songs in the first book. He's grown.
Yeah.
He has grown. At first, when he busted out the reed pipes, I was very confused because he's never really used them in a utility sense. I thought, Grover, now is not the time. As much as we love Jesse McCartney and Hilary Duff, come on. But it turned out to be very useful because it does end up distracting Thorne, which is very helpful here. Thorn roars and assumes his true form, which is a human face, a lion body, and a scorpion tail, and Annabeth, who is now visible because her hat fell off when she hit Percy and the D'Angelos, confirms that he is in fact a manticore. Bianca is understandably very confused. Nico is not confused, he's just concerned because manticores have, quote, 3,000 attack power and +5 to saving throws. And this is something my previous guest Stephen alluded to, is that this made-up game kind of seems to be a hybridization between Yu-Gi-Oh! And Dungeons and Dragons, and I think that that's very fun.
It kind of gave me DragonBall Z vibes, where they
Ooh.
check the power level. I don't remember much of it, but I'm just useless facts that just say he's very powerful. Move on.
I love Nico.
I'm really liking him so far. Only have seen a little glimpse of him, but I'm a big fan. But yeah, as you were saying, Mana said the attack power, if it got to over 9,000, then
There
we'd be truly in trouble. Truly in trouble. Thankfully, only 3,000 for the Manticore. Now, Thorn is able to break free of the weeds, and Annabeth pushes the D'Angelos down again. It is D'Angelo, right? I am saying that right?
Yeah.
We
I wanted
assume,
to- okay.
yeah.
I think that's
Cool.
how we say it. So
Yeah.
Well, I was just making sure because in my notes I have shorthand where I'm just putting D''A, and I know people whose last name is D'Angelo, and I wanted just to make sure that that's actually their last name and not just me being oh yeah, their last name is my friend's. Okay, cool. Glad we're all on the same page here.
can you imagine we've just been quietly letting you do the wrong
I
name
know,
the whole
just
time?
laughing
This
at you the
guy.
whole time.
Wow, he's not qualified for this job at all. I did write down the coordinates for the Sea of Monsters incorrectly. I just
Nice.
wrote 40 instead of 30, which put me in Doylestown, Pennsylvania instead of the Bermuda Triangle. So it's not past me just to write down an incorrect thing in my notes. Anyway, Annabeth pushes the D'Angelos down so that they can avoid getting hit again. And then Percy remembers, oh, right, I have a shield. So he touches the button on his watch from Tyson and activates his shield, which he then uses to block another attack of missiles. But the shield gets dented. And Percy's not sure it can withstand another round. And I love the shield so much. It's only been around for 2-3 chapters and it's already busted. I'm not happy. I'm very sad right now.
That also shows you how much of a beating Percy takes on a regular basis.
Truly. Yes. Just if you did the numbers of times attacked per chapter, it would be an alarmingly high ratio. There's very few chapters that go by. Even if you went by pages, there's not a lot of pages that go by without something drastically dangerous happening to Percy Jackson.
Mm-hmm.
And him kind of knowing it's going to happen, but he's still for some reason, he's not prepared.
Yeah, I would love, obviously it's going to be a struggle until book 5, where I assume he turns 16 and it's a whole big debacle about him and Thalia and whatever else happens. But I would love if there was some sort of spin-off epilogue book where it's just Percy for one summer, just being a kid and nothing bad happens. Percy goes to the museum. Percy walks the High Line. Percy joins a Central Park softball league. Percy learns how to make food. I would love hello, here's a book where nothing bad happens to Percy Jackson. Just a nice beach read, huh? It'd be fun.
I think we'd all love that.
I think it'd be extra funny for us as readers and people who've read Percy Jackson for a long time, because we would just be so anxious the entire time waiting for something bad to happen. And the twist is that nothing happens.
Could be very good. I've never written a fan fiction, but maybe I will dip my toes into the waters and write the Percy Jackson and the Summer Where Nothing Bad Happened fan fiction. And it's just a nice, wholesome time for our boy.
I'd read it.
Yeah. Mental health rest.
Love it. So Grover gets knocked aside by Dr. Thorne. Thalia charges, but then the chopper arrives, and everybody freezes for a second because a helicopter has entered the scene, and that is the normal reaction to have. And this helicopter is souped up. It is clearly a mortal machine. Percy can tell because it has human-looking weapons, such as laser-guided rockets instead of celestial bronze whatever the hex. And that confuses Percy because that would mean monsters and mortals are working together, and that's not something he has seen before, and it's not something I've seen before either. So I, like Percy, am very intrigued to see what is going on with Dr. Thorne and these mystery folks inside of the helicopter.
What's your best guess? What's your best conspiracy theorist guess about what's going on?
Well, we have the general, which has been mentioned but not answered. And I have read, for context for everyone listening, I've finished chapter 3, which is what we're talking about today. So I still have no idea who the general is. I I really wasn't anticipating mortals being in the mix until Percy pointed it out. So maybe there's some sort of evil person in the military that the Greek folks have gotten a hold of. I'm not well versed in how high of a rank general is. I don't know if that's above lieutenant and colonel and captain. My knowledge of that stuff starts and ends with Captain Crunch, who I believe has the incorrect badge stuff on his shoulders. I think he has 4 stripes when he's supposed to have 3 or some reverse. So I have no idea. But I guess my best prediction would be some sort of corrupt military general has been manipulated by Kronos. And I don't know if this person has some sort of faint connection to a Greek figure, or if it's just Kronos found some dude he could infiltrate the dreams of. But that'd be my best guess. But I have no idea.
Okay, so that's your guess at the general.
I guess, yeah, but I really do not know. I'm really unsure.
I'm into the idea of just goading you into making absurd guesses. So that
Honestly,
I
do
think
it.
that's a
It's
good
fun
idea.
for everyone
Yeah,
involved,
exactly.
even me. So keep me on my toes.
Yeah.
So the searchlight of the chopper renders Thalia unable to see momentarily, and that allows the Manticore to swat her away with his tail, and that sends Aegis flying in one direction and the spear flying in the other direction, which is inherently unhelpful. Percy chases after her. He parries away a spike that would have hit her in the chest, and then he raises his shield over them to protect them. Thorn chuckles and calls for them to yield, which he had been doing many times throughout this passage. But then Percy hears the sound of a hunting horn blowing in the woods. And my first thought was that this would be Artemis because they're in the woods. It's nighttime. That's both of her deals. I would hope it's her, especially because I've played a lot of Hades the video game, and I really like Artemis in Hades the video game, so I would love for her to make her way into the books. She hasn't been there yet. We will see what happens. Thorn then says, "No, it cannot be." Oh, sorry, he's French. Thorn says, "No, it cannot be." And then narrator Percy says, "His sentence was cut short when something shot past me like a streak of moonlight." And once narrator Percy said moonlight, I knew for sure it was Artemis. That is certainly her thing. A glowing silver arrow sprouted from Dr. Thorne's shoulder. So moonlight, silver arrow, absolutely locked in that it's Artemis. The only other person I was considering was Apollo, but I'm pretty sure Apollo's whole deal is gold. So the fact that it was a silver arrow made me process of elimination him out of the way. So Thorn then shoots out some spikes in anger, but he's instantly met with a flurry of arrows, and Percy thinks that these arrows are piercing the spikes in midair, but he cannot believe it, as even the Apollo cabin kids couldn't shoot that accurately. And I figured, well, you better believe it, because Artemis and her gang of huntresses could totally do that. So get ready, believe it or not, it's for real. Thorn's got an arrow stuck in his shoulder. So Percy thinks, great, an opportunity for an attack. But the Manticore is not that wounded because he just smacks Percy aside with his tail. And he's really good at smacking people aside with his tail. Kind of his signature move, but you can't argue with it. If you keep on hitting them, why, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. It's like when you play Super Smash Brothers and you find the one attack that works. You just keep planting and chopping down trees as villager. You don't need to do anything else.
Oh, I'm always a Jigglypuff, and I just jump above everyone until there's like one left and try to do the attack where you like make them sleep.
Yeah,
I've done it on accident a few times. I'm not good at Smash, but my tactic is to like hide and jump above everyone. Let them all kill themselves.
It's a viable strategy.
Thank you.
I was going to say, if you have a tail, you might as well use it, right?
Yeah, totally. Especially if you have a big spiky scorpion tail. I mean, come on. It's also one of those things, this kind of happens in basketball sometimes. If somebody is left-handed, sometimes defenders get confused because it's just unnatural for someone to be strong with their left hand as opposed to weak with their left hand. I feel like fighting someone who has a tail, I would just not be prepared for that because you're just not used to ever squaring off against someone who has a tail. I say this as if I've ever been in a fight in my life, but I just feel like if someone had an appendage that you didn't have yourself, it would just be an unnatural thing to try to defend against. So totally, if you've got it, flaunt it. So smack everybody with your big spiky tail.
I do have to ask you. So Thorn, the hyperfixation that I went down for this chapter is Thorn is a doctor. He's Dr. Thorn. Where do you think he got his degree from?
Hmm.
And like, what is it in?
Right?
I think he got his degree from Thornell University.
Oh, man.
Wow.
Ooh, I'm not sure. I'd have to figure out how exactly his role fits in the school. But what would be like? Oh, maybe some sort of specific PhD. I know PhDs are always hyper specific. Maybe it's a particular wing of zoology that has to deal with either scorpions or lions, studying what you know sort of situation. Maybe he's got his PhD in the effects of scorpion poison or something like that.
Can you imagine he goes and gets his PhD in like Greek mythology, specifically manticores, and then interviews himself for his thesis?
Yeah, that would be cheating at this point, really.
I mean, he's an evil man. I guess he's doing whatever he wants.
Yeah, he's writing this paper. His professors are saying, wow, you really seem to be very knowledgeable about the subject. I just did a lot of studying, I guess.
I'm obsessed with the idea that these monsters like get their PhD, get their, like Mrs. Dodd's got her teaching license, that they do this, like, to get into the role. They're all method actors.
Mm-hmm,
Mrs. Dodds is married.
Yeah, who'd she marry? Who's Mr. Dodds? We don't know. Or another Mrs. Dodds.
Yeah.
True. Yeah, they're all very dedicated to their covers, and I appreciate it.
Yeah.
Narrative Percy continues and says, then the archers came from the woods. They were girls, about a dozen of them. The youngest was maybe 10, the oldest about 14, like me. They wore silvery ski parkas and jeans, and they were all armed with bows. They advanced on the manticore with determined expressions. And Annabeth is very excited. She cries, the hunters. And Thalia goes, oh, wonderful, which is a very different response and a very loaded response. And I really want to know what's going on there. And over the course of this chapter and the next chapter, we do not learn, and I'm very intrigued. Now, a tall girl with coppery skin and a silver circlet braided into her hair, which makes her look like, quote, a Persian princess, asks another huntress for permission to kill. And before she can get an answer, the manticore claims that this is direct interference, which is against the ancient laws. But another girl approaches, the one that this first girl was talking to. She looks a little bit younger, maybe 12 to 13. She's got auburn hair in a ponytail and eyes that are silvery yellow like the moon. So I thought, okay, this could be Artemis. However, 12 to 13, that feels very strange. But that question will be answered in a couple of pages.
Mm-hmm.
Percy says that her face is so beautiful that it makes him have to catch his breath, which does feel like a goddess-type situation, yet her expression is stern and dangerous. And I know Percy kind of wrote that in a way to be, oh, she's very beautiful. However, her expression was very not beautiful, or at least is very different. And I thought, look, a stern and dangerous look from a pretty girl, come on, man. Like, that's also gorgeous.
We know that's what Percy is secretly into, right?
Oh, he's totally into that.
I mean, if he likes Annabeth, come on. That is certainly her vibe.
Exactly.
And I can sympathize with that. I've seen my wife play soccer before, and my wife is very short. She's 5'1" on a good day. She'll say 5'2", even though that's a lie. And she will often get underestimated on the soccer pitch because if she's playing in a co-ed league, some big dude will think, oh, this little girl's not gonna defend me well. And she's very crafty. And I've seen her get angry at people that don't properly respect her defensive abilities. And then she steals the ball from them. And look, when she gets the super intense angry eyes, some good, not bad.
We love powerful women.
The shorter the person, the more rage they have.
Ooh, because it's condensed.
Yeah. We're both 5'1". Manasa likes to say she's a tall jock, but she's 5'1".
I'm at least 6 feet tall.
Yeah.
Definitely act like I'm 6 feet.
Full of rage.
Yeah.
But hey, look, age is just a number. Height is just a number.
Yeah.
However you feel. It's an aura. It's a belief.
And I do believe I'm very tall.
And thus you are.
There we go.
So this auburn-haired girl says, the hunting of all wild beasts is within my sphere, and you, foul creature, are a wild beast. And then she gives permission to the Persian princess, Zoe. Thorn growls and says that if he can't have them alive, he'll have them dead, and he lunges at Thalia and Percy, but Annabeth then charges after, yelling no, and Zoe warns her to get out of the line of fire. Annabeth leaps onto the manticore's back and drives her knife into his mane, which I thought was very cool and very on brand for Annabeth. Mm-hmm. Zoe orders the hunters to fire. Percy yells no because he doesn't want Annabeth to get hit. The arrows catch Thorn in the neck and the chest, and he falls back saying, quote, this is not the end, huntress. You shall pay. And then he leaps off the cliff with Annabeth still on his back. back, and Percy yells Annabeth and chases after her. But the helicopter then starts shooting bullets at them, so he cannot chase after. So then the auburn-haired girl looks calmly at the chopper and says, quote, "Mortals are not allowed to witness my hunt." And then she makes the helicopter explode into dust, except that's not what happens. What actually happens is that the metal of the helicopter dissolves into a flock of ravens that scatter into the night, and that is the most thematic thing that Artemis could have done, and it's incredible.
So cool.
I immediately imagine being maybe 12 years old and reading this. I was losing my mind. I was like, this is who I want to be when I grow up.
Yeah, super cool, super powerful. Here's my question, though, which does not get answered. What happens to the people inside of the helicopter? Are they just there? Are they also birds? Are they dead? Did the birds eat them? We know nothing about what happens.
Oh.
I think they fully die.
Do the birds that were the helicopter now have sentience?
Ah.
Does it remember being a helicopter? Does it have helicopter memories? Are they a hive mind?
Whoa. Oh my gosh. Does each bird act differently? Does the propeller bird act differently from the laser gun bird,
Yeah.
which acts differently from the windshield bird? Lots of very important questions to ask Uncle Rick if I ever get
Yeah.
him on the podcast.
Yeah.
These are
For
the
sure.
questions. That's the question.
These
you
are
go
the
with.
hard-hitting questions. But I mean, you might be right, Erin, that they just die because Smelly Gabe did just get killed. And it was
Yes.
just kind of like, ho-hum, he's gone. Artemis could just say, all right, these people saw something they weren't supposed to see. The only answer is death.
Mhm.
So I wouldn't put it past her.
She also seems like the kind of goddess, or all the gods do, that they don't really care. They're like, whatever.
Yeah. Oh, it's just some mortals. Meh. So the hunters then approach. Zoe stops at Thalia and says, "You," with disgust. Need to know the backstory. Need it. Thalia then says, "Zoe Nightshade," with anger. And I don't like this. That's too cool of a name.
So
It's not
cool.
believable. No one's last name is Nightshade, unless it's an adopted last name where she took this on as an Artemis Huntress persona thing. But come on, Nightshade, a little too cool. Little too cool and a little too thematic. But I guess it is one of those things. I forget what the name of this phenomenon is, but there is the thing where if your last name is Painter, you're likely to become a painter or something. So maybe it was one of those things.
Her last name was Nightshade, so she started killing animals.
Yeah.
It was destiny.
So Zoe identifies the group to this auburn-haired girl as Chiron's campers, and Percy yells that they have to let them save Annabeth, and the auburn-haired girl, who calls Percy by name, says Annabeth is beyond help. Percy tries to get to his feet, but the hunters hold him down, and the auburn-haired girl tells Percy that he's in no shape to jump off of a cliff. And Percy demands to be let go and asks this girl who she thinks she is. And Zoe then steps up like she's going to slap Percy, but the girl instructs Zoe to stand down as Percy meant no disrespect. He's just distraught and he's confused and he doesn't know what's happening. And now I will cut to I live read the end of this chapter at the suggestion of my last guest. So you can hear my live reaction to me learning who this person is. And honestly, being more confused by that than worried for Annabeth because I knew Annabeth's coming back. It's book 3. She's going to be fine. So honestly, I was not and I am not concerned about Annabeth. The young girl looked at me, her eyes colder and brighter than the winter moon. "I am Artemis," she said, "goddess of the hunt." She's the younger, what? Artemis is like a kid? Or does she just look like a kid? What is going on here? So yeah, I was very confused that Artemis as a goddess would take the form of a preteen / teenaged girl. But in the next chapter, we will learn what's going on here. And speaking of that next chapter, we're going to take a break here for the mid-roll break, which we are calling in this book, The Titan's Purse.
That's good.
That's a good one.
Thank you. Hello and welcome to the Titan's Purse. If you have ever wanted to see the newest Olympian either live in person or live via a live stream, you are in luck because there are a bunch of events happening, more than just the one. There's now a bunch. And yes, that is a technical term. There's a bunch of live shows taking place with the newest Olympian in the future. Obviously, we've got the big first ever TNO show on August 24th, 2022 in New York City and also streaming everywhere. If you want to get tickets in person or or via live stream, you can go to thenewestolympian.com/live and get tickets right now. And for that live stream, the show starts at 7:30 p.m. Eastern time, but don't worry if that's a weird time zone or day for you, because your ticket gets you access to 1 week of replay, so you can watch it at a more convenient time. You could watch it multiple times, do whatever you want. I'm not your mom, but those tickets live at thenewestolympian.com/live. And if you are a TNO patron at any level, you'll get 20% off the live stream tickets at thenewestolympian.com/live. So why don't you go do that? Go over to thenewestolympian.com/Patreon, join the Patreon, then go to thenewestolympian.com/live, get the live stream tickets, save 20% on the tickets. Bing, bang, boom, you're in business. Now, you're also in business if you want to see us live and you live in or near, or you're going to be traveling to the following cities. Those cities include Philadelphia, Salt Lake City, Portland, and Dallas. And the reason is we had 4 Potterless shows booked for the end of the year, but the people have spoken and they want some more TNO stuff. So we have turned those shows into double features, where one act will be The Newest Olympian and one act will be Potterless. Just like Hannah Montana, it's the best of both worlds. So if you want to go to a TNO double feature with Potterless show, you can do so. August 31st will be in Philadelphia, and that one will also be streaming. Tickets for that live stream go on sale tomorrow. Then on September 11th, 2022, we'll be in Salt Lake City. On September 25th, we'll be in Portland, Oregon. And on October 9th, we'll be in Dallas, Texas. You can also get tickets to those at thenewestolympian.com/live. The live shows will be much like an actual episode recording where I'm covering a portion of the book. Follow us on social media at Newest Olympian on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook, because I will be posting in advance of the show what chapter/chapters we'll be covering in case you want to read ahead of time and not be spoiled by watching the live show. So all of that is very exciting, and I'm excited to bring those shows to you. And I'm also excited about the people bringing kindness and selflessness to me via the Patreon. I want to give a shout out to the newest members of our Patreon team over at thenewestolympian.com/Patreon. And first, I would like to give a special shout out to a few folks who are at the Ultra God tier and somehow just got lost in the sauce of Patreon. And I haven't been saying their names for a couple episodes, and I'm really sorry. So mega shout out to Harlan Christ, CC Reads 23, Julia Kendall, and ML Oscar Thomason. Also, shout out to our newest Super God tier patron, DeRoy. Shout out to our newest God tier patrons, Casey, Danielle, SW Plagus, Kerry Mooseman, and Hoverboy X. And shout out to our newest Demigod tier patrons, PM, Emma Kane, Bianca Patel, Zono, Natasha Simmons, B Crown, Essie Piper, Ann Visor, Serena, and Maria Zhao Bras. Thank you all so much. May Artemis bless you that whenever you try to take pictures of the supermoon, it actually looks good. And speaking of support, I want to thank Multitude for having us as a part of the collective. If you're all caught up on the Newest Olympian and you're looking for new podcasts to listen to, you should check out some of the shows from Multitude. There's a bunch of wonderful podcasts. I work on some of those podcasts, and one of the ones that I work on that is in production for season 4 is Meddling Adults. Meddling Adults is a game show for charity where I host and guests compete to solve children's mysteries from classics like Scooby-Doo, Encyclopedia Brown, and more, and whoever earns the most points wins money for a charity of their choosing. It is very fun. It is very wholesome. It's a good time. You can play along at home to see if you are better than us, or if you are as smart as the fictional young detectives in these children's programs. It is a hoot and a half, and you can listen wherever you get your podcasts by searching for Meddling Adults or going to meddlingadults.com. And before we wrap up here, you're going to hear words from a few sponsors who make it feasible for me to be a full-time podcaster. Some of these ads will be read by me, others of them won't. The ones that are not read by me are inserted locally, so if you live in New Zealand, don't be surprised if you hear an ad in English just with a New Zealand accent. And once those ads are complete, we'll get back to this episode of The Newest Olympian. And we're back, and we're here to discuss Chapter 3. Bianca D'Angelo makes a choice. So I always guess before beginning the chapter, just write down what I think is going to happen in it. My guess is that she takes the red pill, obviously, to stay in Wonderland and see how deep the rabbit hole goes. Very different choice, actually, is what takes place. Narrator Percy starts this chapter off with an absolute banger of a quote. After seeing Dr. Thorne turn into a monster and plummet off the edge of a cliff with Annabeth, you'd think nothing else could shock me. But when this 12-year-old girl told me she was the goddess Artemis, I said something real intelligent like, okay, and that's tremendous. Well done, Percy. Now, Grover goes full simp on Artemis. Huge Artemis fan, Grover. Big ol' fanboy. And that causes Thalia to yell at him to get up and to focus on saving Annabeth and to not fawn over Artemis. Now, Bianca, which I very much appreciate her move here, she says, whoa, hold up, time out. Who are you people? Which is great, and this is the bringing us back to reality that we all needed right now. And then Artemis, taking after Chiron, doesn't actually answer the question, but instead deflects, saying it might be more helpful to ask Bianca who she is and who her parents are. And I figured, well, this will kill the mood. And it does, because then Bianca has to say, I'm an orphan. How dare you? But as she is explaining this, she can tell from the crowd that no one believes her, and she begins to get upset. And then Zoe just butts right in and says, you are a half-blood. And then narrator Percy says the following: her accent was hard to place. It sounded old-fashioned, like she was reading from a really old book. And then Zoe continues, one of thy parents was mortal, the other was an Olympian. And the use of thy in combo with what Percy said makes me think of when you watch a movie like 300 or Spartacus, when they don't actually have a Greek or Roman accent. Their accent is just old or ancient, and you just talk dramatically, but vaguely British, and you just overpronounce words. So that's how I imagine Zoe is speaking every single time she says anything.
100%. And just like, why is she British? Like, they always do that. They always go, okay, it needs to sound fancy and old. British.
But vaguely British. Just
Vaguely.
a hint, a sprinkle of British.
It's very like Game of Thrones, Lord of the Rings, like all high fantasy, they're British. Like video games that are high fantasy, they're all British. All the elves.
British.
Right. You just have to talk dramatically and ever so slightly British to where you can't really put your finger on whether or not the actor is British, is just where old accents fall. So that's how Zoe speaks, our Persian princess. So Bianca then asks, Olympian athlete? And Zoe says, the gods. Nico says, cool. Bianca says, no, not cool. And Nico excitedly asks if Zeus has bolts that do 600 damage and if he has extra movement points. But Bianca tells him to shut up and puts her hands on her face and says, this is not your stupid mytho-magic game. Okay, there are no gods. And I love my Italian queen, Bianca D'Angelo. This is great. This is very much like the folks I grew up with, and I love it a whole heck of a lot. Narrator Percy notes that he is incredibly anxious about Annabeth, and all he wants to do is find her, but he feels for the D'Angelos because he's been in their shoes before. And Thalia feels similarly. She tries to level with Bianca that the gods are real and that the life of a demigod, which she is a tough one. And Bianca goes, oh, like the girl who fell? And Artemis tells her not to worry. If Annabeth can be found, she will find her. And that causes Percy to ask, well, then why don't you let us go look for her? And Artemis reveals that there's magic afoot. And then I thought, oh, okay, maybe this dude teleported away. I don't know if that is a manticore ability, but something more mischievous than just jumping off of a cliff trying to kill people on his way down to his demise. Something more mischievous than that is afoot. And that made me also wonder, and this could be another prediction, it seems like the current formula for at least books 2 and 3 is we have 4 friends at the start of the book, and one friend goes away for most of the book. And last book, it was add Tyson, subtract Grover. And it feels like this book might be add Thalia, subtract Annabeth. That's at least where the breadcrumbs are headed for me.
Okay.
Percy feels like this must be the truth, because if Annabeth was in the sea, he would be able to sense it because he loves her. And Nico asks about Thorn, and then they explain how monsters work. Bianca talks to Nico and says people trying to jump them in DC makes sense. Nico agrees and recalls a time that they had a bus driver with ram's horns. And I really want to know if that is a particular Greek mythological reference. So I'll have to ask our Greek mythological correspondent, Dr. Moya. I don't know if the Minotaur is now driving a bus in his tighty whities or if there's somebody else who would. I guess the Minotaur doesn't have ram's horns. He has bull's horns, but I don't know of any ram's horned Greek mythological figures. I don't know if either of you two have anything that comes to mind there, but I was intrigued.
Aries is the ram constellation, but is that based off of Roman more than Greek?
I don't know.
I'm not sure. We'll find out.
Because the fawns and satyrs and stuff have little horns.
Right.
The Minotaur's horns are big, but they're not rams.
Yes.
He's an icon.
And his tidy whities.
With his piercing?
So the way Grover fits into everything is explained, and now this section of the book feels a little recappy for the folks who may have skipped book 1 and 2, but not so much so. So it's got a little bit of, okay, if you've missed the first 2 books, we won't have you be completely lost. However, you should probably read the first 2 books at this point. So Percy says they have to go to camp, which has Nico very excited. But Bianca is more hesitant. And Zoe says there's another option. And Thalia says, no, there isn't, which means there is. And she doesn't like the other option. And at this point, I'm trying to guess. what's the deal? Why do Thalia and Zoe hate each other? And my best guess is that Thalia maybe was a member of the Huntresses, and then she either left or got kicked out or something. Just would be my guess there. But I don't know if a Zeus daughter demigod would even join Artemis's Huntresses in the first place. So I'm not sure, but it just feels like there's so much history there that would at least be a situation that would cause some bad blood. Maybe Thalia found a boy she thought was really cute, so she had to leave for her punk rock boyfriend. But I'm not sure exactly what's afoot, but there's certainly some lingering beef between the two of them. Mm-hmm. Thank you for not spoiling anything. Yeah. This is the fun job of a TNO guest, is just to nod and go, okay, great job, Mike. Thank you very much.
It's good to practice our poker faces.
It's like when a kid gives you a drawing to put on the fridge and you're just like, that's nice, honey. Good prediction.
Oh, good job, Mike. Yeah, we'll put it on the fridge.
Proud of
you. So Artemis says that they have burdened the children enough, which I think is funny since she is currently in the form of a 12 to 13-year-old. And she orders Zoe to rest here for a few hours to tend to the wounded and to retrieve the belongings of our team from the school. Artemis then asks Bianca to come with her for a conversation. Nico asks what about him, and Artemis then deflects and instead influences Grover to keep Nico busy by playing Nico's game, and Grover jumps at the opportunity to help Artemis, who he has a big old crush on. So that is fun to see Grover stumbling about to do anything he can to please her.
I love that you have opposite characters where Thalia is just like so angry and Grover is so obsessed. It's like very polar personalities.
Yes, truly the balance. And then Percy in the middle is slightly on board and slightly not okay with Artemis. It's a fun situation for sure. Zoe glares at Thalia one last time before leaving, and Thalia grumbles about the hunters as soon as Zoe does leave. So really, really interested to see what the situation is here. Percy agrees with Thalia by saying, I'm with you, I don't trust, but Thalia just snaps back, raging on him, saying, oh, you're with me? What were you thinking back there in the gym, Percy? You'd take on Dr. Thorne all by yourself? You knew, in italics, he was a monster. If we'd stuck together, we could have taken him without the hunters getting involved. Annabeth might still be here. Did you think of that? And I felt bad for Percy here. Yes, he made a rash decision, but come on, Thalia, go easy on him. He's still relatively new to all of this.
Mm-hmm.
I do really like their dynamic of how Thalia always pushes back against Percy, and they're both so like hot-headed, and I like seeing them fight just from a reading perspective. It's fun.
Yeah.
No, it's definitely fun, and I think it's something that would be helpful for Percy. Thankfully, Percy's pretty good about trying to understand the perspective of everyone else and not just think me. But it's always helpful to have someone to push back against. You never want to be surrounded by yes people. So to have the foil of Thalia, who seems to be ready to call him out at any second for anything, I think will be beneficial to Percy in the long run. So Percy gets very angry, and he thinks of some harsh things to say, and he debates saying them, but then he sees Annabeth's fallen hat and his mood changes. Thalia sheds a single tear and turns away, marching off. And the reason Percy is so upset is because he realizes Thalia might be right. He might be the reason that they are in this mess. So he's not feeling great about the entire situation, especially now because he could be the one to blame for it, which is valid.
I love children's books where they actually like allow the main character to face consequences and feel regret.
Yeah, it's good. It's good for teaching lessons, and I think it makes for an interesting story. You don't want to have the perfect, infallible character that nothing ever goes wrong for them and there's no stakes and everything's fine and unicorns and rainbows. Sometimes you don't make the right call and you have to deal with it. And I think you're exactly right. It makes for an interesting character, it makes for an interesting story. It's good for kids to read about. 10 out of 10. So the hunters set up camp and they have silver silk tents, which sounds very fancy, and they have a bonfire as well. One girl blows a silver dog whistle, and a pack of a dozen white wolves serve as guard dogs, which is awesome. They also have guard falcons in the trees, so this whole crew is just dope. I'm loving the hunters. Thalia, I think you're wrong. These people seem wonderful.
You get a free wolf if you join. Like, that's amazing.
Yeah.
Perks. way better than when you join a tech startup and you get a knockoff hydro flask and a backpack.
Yeah.
Look at the benefits.
A t-shirt.
Yeah, a zip-up hoodie, whatever. You get a guard wolf and a guard falcon. Sign me up, even though I can't sign up because I'm a boy.
And immortality. You don't need health insurance then.
Right? Immortality's cool up to a point, though.
Yeah.
I would love if there was an immortality that may be renewed every 100 years or something,
Ooh,
and I could call it off.
That's true.
Like it's a subscription service that you can, like when you sign up for a free trial and then you can quit like the next day and make sure that your card doesn't get recharged. I would love to sign up for immortality and then just know, okay, I'll die at 100. That's fine. I'll be safe, everything else, but then I don't have to go all Green Mile and see everyone I've ever loved die before me. Now, even the weather seems to cooperate with this crew as the wind and the snow die down a bit. Percy's shoulder still hurts, and his guilt is immense. And this is where he realizes it's not just because Annabeth is gone, but also because it could be my fault. And this is something I didn't even realize until Percy brings it up. Annabeth in the gym said she had something important to tell Percy, but now we don't know what it is. And the plot always does this in the series, doesn't it? Mm-hmm. Hey, I've got something really important to tell you. What's that? Uh-oh, we'll revisit this in 12 chapters. I gotta know what's going on. Come on, Rick.
There's like, I think it's from Seinfeld. It's like that line that he always says, like when they describe him in the script, where he's just like, he fails to elaborate. He just tells an important fact and then fails to elaborate for the rest of the chapter. I'm like, oh God.
Yeah, and I'm thankful that in this case, unlike with Harry Potter, it's not because of a lack of asking questions. That would always frustrate me with Harry, is he just would think something and then not say it out loud. I know that it could be because his upbringing with Petunia, he was told not to ask questions, whatever. I like that Percy asks questions. The two things that either happens, though, is that some sort of Greek figure pulls a Chiron and deflects and doesn't actually answer the question, or something big and dramatic happens, such as giant manticore attack. So, the two tracks of things not getting answered in the PJO series, being cheeky or maybe dying. Grover returns with Nico and begins to tend to Percy's wounded shoulder. Apparently his arm is turned green, which is scary, but Nico thinks is very cool because he's 10. And Grover gives Percy some ambrosia. He begins to clean out the wound. And then Nico takes out all of his figurines. Percy says, oh, that's a nice collection. And Nico says that he almost has a full set, save for the super rare ones. And I just think this is very cute. This is a very cute older kid, younger kid vibe. It reminds me of when I used to babysit the kids in my neighborhood when I was in 8th grade and they were only a couple years younger than me. They're still basically your friends, but they can't take care of themselves. So this is fun. A little 4-year age gap friendship going on. Super cute. Now, Percy asks Nico if he's been playing a long time. And Nico says only this year and before that. And then he can't remember. So I don't know if this is just him being 10 or if this is some sort of Greek thing. I have no idea. So I'm intrigued to see. It felt like not just a throwaway line. So I am interested if this will be revisited, which I feel like it will. Nico then asks Percy about Riptide, and Percy shows it to him, explains the whole deal of it. Nico then asks if it ever runs out of ink, and Percy says that he doesn't write with it, which is fantastic. He then asks Percy if he's really the son of Poseidon. Percy confirms. He asks, okay, does that mean you're a good surfer? And Percy shoots a look at Grover, who is actively trying very hard to fight back laughter, which I think is a great little note to add. And then Percy says, geez, Nico, I've never really tried. Love 10-year-old kids asking questions. So fun.
Especially when they're inside their hyperfixation. Like, this is his dream come true, and he's just slinging all the questions he can at a guy who's grieving the loss of one of his best friends.
Yeah, it's very cute from Nico. Maybe not the right time and place for these questions, given the loss of Annabeth, as you've brought up, but it's adorable. And babysitting kids that age, I did it recently, and it's the right sweet spot of they ask you a lot of questions, which is fun, but it's not like when they're very young and they just keep asking you why. They ask you more interesting questions, and sometimes it gets really deep and insightful and you don't anticipate it and you're contemplating life, which we're approaching that here with Percy. Narrator Percy then says, he went on asking questions. Did I fight a lot with Thalia since she was a daughter of Zeus? And then in parentheses, I didn't answer that one. If Annabeth's mother was Athena, the goddess of wisdom, then why didn't Annabeth know better than to fall off a cliff? I tried not to strangle Nico for asking that one. Was Annabeth my girlfriend? At this point, I was ready to stick the kid in a meat-flavored sack and throw him to the wolves. Superb. I love this. So funny. Just
so
to go
good.
from, cute little questions, slightly inappropriate questions. I will murder this 10-year-old child.
Which is accurate, like you said. Like, he's only a couple years older than Nico, so he's also not exactly mature enough to handle these, so he's ready to smack down.
Mm-hmm. And of course, the question that angers him the most is Annabeth your girlfriend? The most innocuous question. But to a 14-year-old, the
13-year-old.
most serious. Yeah.
Exactly.
So Zoe approaches very regally, but then she studies Percy very distastefully, as if he was, quote, a bag of dirty laundry she'd been sent to fetch. But Zoe says that Artemis wants to speak with Percy, which has me very excited. So they enter the tent. Bianca is still there. It's warm and comfortable. There are silk rugs and pillows. There's a golden brazier with fire that is not giving off any smoke in the middle. And behind Artemis is her enormous bow on an oak display stand. And the bow is carved to resemble gazelle horns, which I think is really fascinating. The wall is adorned with animal pelts, and Erin and Percy says, I figured an animal rights activist would have had a heart attack looking at all those rare skins, but maybe since Artemis was the goddess of the hunt, she could replenish whatever she shot. I love this thought from Percy, and it's my headcanon. I believe it, Percy. Sure.
Immediately makes Aunt Artemis cooler, too.
Yeah.
Totally. Percy thinks there is another pelt beside her, but it's actually a live deer with glittering fur and silver horns. The vibes are immaculate. Just tremendous stuff here. Artemis calls for Percy to join them. He does, and then Artemis analyzes him, which makes Percy a little uncomfortable, and then this exchange happens. Are you surprised by my age? A little. I could appear as a grown woman, or a blazing fire, or anything else I want, but this is what I prefer. This is the average age of my hunters, and all young maidens for whom I am patron, before they go astray. Go astray? Grow up, become smitten with boys, become silly, preoccupied, insecure, forget themselves. And all Percy can say is, oh, which is the correct response. So that makes all the 12, 13-year-old business make a lot of sense. So I am put at ease for my confusion. Zoe sits at Artemis's right and glares at Percy like this was all his fault, as narrator Percy describes, like I had invented the idea of being a guy. His distaste for Zoe, I think, is very fun. I feel like he's very much going to be Team Thalia and not be a big Zoe fan, and I am here for this. I'm not liking Zoe either. She needs to calm down a little bit and come down to earth. She's a little too uppity, the Persian princess that she is. Artemis asks Percy to forgive her hunters for having hostility towards boys. They aren't often in the camp, and the last boy who was got turned into a jackalope, which is apparently something that Artemis enjoys doing. So she's got her hobbies.
You know, if I could turn people into jackalopes, there are quite a few men on the list right now, you know, that I would just call up Artemis, have her do that for me.
Yeah.
For the world, really.
Right. Look, there's a lot of us out there, and a lot of us are very bad. The world could be served with a bunch of people being turned into jackalopes.
Yeah.
I support your decision.
Yeah, thank you.
So Artemis wants Percy to describe the Manticore situation some more. Bianca told Artemis some of the horrible things that Dr. Thorne said to her, but she wants Percy to explain more. And he does, and Artemis says this is what she feared. Zoe asks if it's the scent, and Artemis confirms, and Percy, like me, asks what scent? Quote, things are stirring that I have not hunted in millennia. Prey so old that I have nearly forgotten. We came here tonight sensing the Manticore, but he was not the one I seek. Tell me again exactly what Dr. Thorne said. And Percy goes, I hate middle school dances? She goes, no, after that. He said somebody called the General was going to explain things to me. And then Zoe's face goes pale, and she starts to say something to Artemis, but Artemis shushes her and tells Percy to continue. And Percy says, well, then Thorne was talking about the Great Stir Pot, and Bianca corrects him that it's the Great Stirring. And Percy goes, yeah. And he said, soon we shall have the most important monster of all, the one that shall bring about the downfall of Olympus. And Artemis is completely still, which is not what you want. You don't want that reaction. No reaction is a bad reaction, especially from a goddess. Percy tries to break the awkward silence by saying, maybe he was lying, which is phenomenal. But Artemis says that he was not. She says that she's been too slow to see the signs and must hunt the monster. When Zoe mentions the troops joining, Artemis says that she must do it alone. And I wrote here in my notes, what did we just learn, Artemis? Going out on your own is bad, and you should do things with friends. Are you not taking away the lessons that Rick is writing into Percy Jackson and the Titan's Curse? Come on, get that reading comprehension up, Artemis.
The buddy system is essential.
Right. Now, Artemis's reasoning is that it's too dangerous for the hunters. Quote, "You know where I must start my search. You cannot go there with me. So I wonder if this is a place that only goddesses can go. Maybe it's a gods and goddesses only thing, and demigods or mortals cannot join." The cannot made me think it might be a you literally cannot as opposed to you should not. So we'll have to see. Maybe it's a thing Annabeth referenced earlier when she said it's right there when talking about San Francisco. I'm not sure. Artemis plans to bring the creature back to Olympus by winter solstice to make clear the looming danger. And I'm very excited because if we get a winter solstice chapter, that would be fun. I want to see more of the gods in action, all together, bickering at each other. I would love this. Then we get this exchange. Percy says, "You know what the monster is?" And Artemis says, "Let us pray, I am wrong." And Percy says, "Can goddesses pray?" As the narrator says, "I'd never really thought about that." A flicker of a smile played across Artemis's lips, and then she continues, "Before I go, Percy Jackson, I have a small task for you." And Percy asks, "Does it involve getting turned into a jackalope?" And Artemis says, "Sadly, no. I want you to escort the hunters back to Camp Half-Blood. They can stay there in safety until I return." And Zoe is quite peeved. She does not want to return to Camp Half-Blood. She mentions that the last time they were there, it was a terrible situation, but doesn't explain exactly what it is. I would love to learn exactly what happened. But Artemis says that Dionysus should be able to get over a little misunderstanding. So my interests are quite piqued. I gotta know what's going on here. There's so many. I feel like I need an entire notebook of things that were hinted at but not cleared up fully just in this chapter and a half we're talking about today.
Yeah.
Setting it up for you.
I realize I have given you two quite a difficult task unintentionally, in that most of this chapter is people alluding to things that will be resolved later. And I'm very sorry for putting you in this prickly situation.
Oh, it's been fun. I love it.
I forgot how many like little mysteries there are throughout this book, and like all of the breadcrumbs are being dropped in these chapters, I swear.
Yes, someone bought a loaf of bread and put it in a blender and then dumped them out all over the back half of chapter 2 and all of chapter 3.
Yeah.
Hansel and Gretel are thriving right now.
They really are.
So Artemis says that all that remains is for Bianca to make her choice. And then again, I remembered, oh, right, the chapter title. Yes, of course. She has to make a choice. And the choice is whether or not to join the hunt. She has been invited. And I think that's pretty cool. Why not go for it? Percy does not think that this is very cool. He starts listing off all the cool things that Camp Half-Blood has to offer. And he ends by asking, what do you even get for joining the hunt? And Zoe says, immortality for starters, which is pretty tough to beat.
And the free wolf. Yeah, it's pretty hard.
I mean, yeah. Doesn't even mention free wolf and free guard falcon. Also huge value adds. Percy asks, she's kidding, right? And Artemis says, Zoe rarely kids about anything. My hunters follow me on my adventures. They are my maid servants, my companions, my sisters in arms. Once they swear loyalty to me, they are indeed immortal, unless they fall in battle, which that feels like isn't immortality. How does that work? Unless fall just means like you lose the battle. But if you're immortal, unless you fall in battle, you're not immortal, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, and what does battle mean? Like if I have a rock, paper, scissors fight and then, stab you in the middle of it, are you going to die?
Is that a battle?
Right. Are you immortal for anything that isn't a battle? Are you only immortal for just weird accidental deaths like you slip while you're rock climbing or something? I don't know. It feels like
And
a very...
probably.
Oh, right, okay, yeah. It just feels like a very flimsy immortality clause.
Yeah.
I feel like you really got to read the fine print before you sign this. And they do not give Bianca a lot of time to process this very important decision. And she's 12.
Yeah, that's my problem with this too, is like, I think the hunters are so cool. And also I'm like, girl, like, go home and read the terms and conditions or something.
Yes. Have someone else get a second set of eyes on the contract. You really need someone to look over this. See if they have an internship program. Can you just commit for a 2 to 3 month thing and then revisit? There's got to be something more than this all or nothing approach.
Well, it's also because like the hunters require all of their hunters to be like young.
Yeah,
They're all, like, 10 to 14, and like Artemis was the goddess is associated with like, she's one of the maiden goddesses, so she's associated with like virginity, and so they're probably all expected to be like pre-puberty teen girls, or not teen, young girls. And so maybe they're like, time is of the essence. We don't want you to go to camp and meet someone you like.
Yeah, that's what it seems like. And that's what Artemis kind of explains. And thankfully, as she continues, it does seem like this binding contract. I don't even know if they say the word binding, but it does feel like it's pretty easy to get out of because it says, unless they fall in battle, which is unlikely. So at least they've said it's unlikely, or break their oath. So it seems like breaking the oath isn't that bad. So you can just sign the contract and then go, actually, just kidding. And then they let you go. So maybe it's all right. Percy asks what oath, and Artemis says to forswear romantic love forever, to never grow up, never get married, to be a maiden eternally. And now Artemis just sounds like Peter Pan.
Yeah.
Percy asks, like you, and Artemis nods. And Percy asks, so you just go around the country recruiting half-bloods? And Zoe interrupts, saying, not just half-bloods. Lady Artemis does not discriminate by birth. All who honor the goddess may join. Half-bloods, nymphs, mortals. And Percy asks, which one are you then? And anger flashes in Zoe's eyes, which, again, a very mysterious woman we have going on here. And she says, that is not thy concern, boy. The point is Bianca may join if she wishes. It is her choice. And Percy is still not on board at all. He pleads for Bianca to consider Nico since he can't join the hunt, and Artemis agrees that he cannot because he is a boy, says that camp is the best that boys can do, and Percy goes, hey, taking offense to that as if camp is not a cool thing to do. Artemis then assures Bianca that she can see Nico from time to time, but she will be free of responsibility, and Nico will have camp counselors to take care of him, and she will have a new family, all of the hunters. And Bianca dreamily says a new family, free of responsibility. And now I don't like this anymore, because now it seems like the only reason she wants to do this is that she isn't burdened by her little brother. I don't know. I can see both sides of it, because first off, I could never imagine what it would be like to be in her situation. I have not had to deal with the loss of one parent, let alone both. And I've never had to be an older sibling, and I've never had to be the parental figure for my younger sibling who's only 2 years younger than me. So it's very tough. And also she's 12, so I can't expect her to make this big adult decision. But it just felt a little bit for the wrong reasons-y, which made me feel a little uncomfortable.
Mm-hmm.
I was in the same boat.
Do you have siblings?
I do. I have an older sister by 4 years.
Okay. I feel like younger siblings always really hate this. And older sibling, I'm an older sibling.
Okay.
I honestly am not like a big fan of this decision, but that's having read the whole book.
Okay.
And I feel like I can have more empathy as an older sibling. That's what I've always noticed in like the fandom is people are very divided on this decision. And from what I've seen, it's always like older siblings are like, yeah, Bianca, and younger siblings are like, how could you do this? And it's so funny.
Yeah. I mean, I could see the opinions really dividing along that line, but I think what it really boils down to is she's 12 and has had way too much responsibility thrown upon her.
Yeah.
And not only would this be a tough situation if you were just a human, just a regular mortal person having to be an orphan and have a younger brother to take care of, but I'm sure their life has been super rough and not easy being demigods, and she's getting old enough to where monsters are attacking and stuff. It's not an ideal situation for her, so I cannot blame her for it.
Yeah, I really wish they'd given her 24 hours to like take in the fact that she's a half-blood.
Right. And maybe if there was an extended version, or maybe when they get to doing the TV show, I know Rick has said that they're going to expand things a little bit. Maybe they do. This could just be the victim of, oh, it's a book that we have to keep kind of short, so we can't devote an entire chapter to analyzing the thought process of a character we met a couple of pages ago. So it could just be that.
Yeah.
So Percy says that Bianca can't do this. Bianca asks Zoe if it's worth it. Zoe says that it is. Bianca asks what she has to do. Zoe says just to take the pledge, which is a joke that maybe 4 people will get because I'm referencing an NBA app commercial starring San Antonio Spurs legend Manu Ginobili, where the commercial was centered around taking the pledge of app allegiance to download the NBA app. And it's a bunch of players going, take the pledge. But Manu Ginobili goes,
take the pledge.
I just love basketball too much to let that go. She says you just got to take the pledge. Bianca does take the pledge. The flames brighten. Bianca feels stronger. Zoe welcomes her, and Artemis tells her to remember her pledge as it is now her life, or at least her life for a couple years until she finds a cute boy and then says, bye. Narrator Percy says the following about this. I couldn't speak. I felt like a trespasser and a complete failure. I couldn't believe I'd come all this way and suffered so much only to lose Bianca to some eternal girls club. Very funny, but also I feel so bad for Percy. This is crushing stuff. Artemis tells Percy not to despair and to bring Nico to camp where he can choose to remain if he wishes. Percy asks how they'll get there, and Artemis says that she will arrange a ride from her brother. And I thought, okay, who's the brother of Artemis? But I was too excited to finish the chapter than to process this, so I just kept reading. Percy then says, okay, so we're going to get a ride from your brother, huh? Just sounding very mopey about it all. Artemis's silver eyes gleam, and then she says, yes, boy, you see, Bianca D'Angelo is not the only one with an annoying brother. Out of line. Completely out of line. My opinion of Artemis dropped a ton. What are these shots, these strays that Nico is catching here? He's not annoying. He's 10 and he has interests. Come on, Artemis, back off. Anyway,
it's the younger sibling bias is coming out in you. You're like, don't insult
feel
the baby
you.
brother.
I agree with you. Unnecessary. He's sweet and he is an orphan, so people should be nicer to him.
cut him some slack.
Yeah.
But she continues, it's time for you to meet my irresponsible twin, Apollo. And I didn't know that Apollo and Artemis are twins, but that does make sense since both of their deals seem to be bow and arrow related. And then you got the silver and the gold. So that makes sense. It feels like Artemis is projecting her distaste towards Apollo onto Nico. And I think that's unfair. And I think Artemis should go to therapy to talk this out so that she is not insulting 10-year-old boys needlessly. But that's the end of this chapter. And that's the end of this episode of The Newest Olympian. So...
all the gods need therapy. That's
Yeah.
all.
Oh my God. Can you imagine? This series would be way different if they would just talk it out with a professional. Anyway, I'm so glad you two were able to join. We could make the TNO CHP crossover finally happen.
Yeah.
If folks want to find you talking about Percy Jackson and stuff or anything beyond your podcast, where can they find you two?
Our podcast is at Camp Half Pod we're on Instagram and Twitter. Camp Half Pod on all the podcast platforms. We're on Heroes of Olympus now, so if you are reading along with this podcast and then got way ahead and got to Heroes of Olympus, that's where we're at.
Most folks have blitzed past me because I'm taking too long.
I love that.
I can't blame them. They're good books.
It's awesome. And you can find us both there, and then both our own socials are linked in various Instagram posts and such, so... yeah.
You can also send us an email at camphalfpod@gmail.com. We get really fun submissions. We do lightning bolt questions. So if you have any questions about Greek mythology, any questions on your mind or the book, we love answering them on our podcast.
Also, I've published a book. I am an author,
nice.
and so you can buy it. I'm like, shout out my book, Laurel Everywhere by Erin and Moynihan. It's sad YA is the vibe. So if you like YA and you're like in a space to read more sad, but like eventually heartwarming books, check that out.
Amazing. That's so fantastic. Well, Manasa and Erin, thank you so much for coming on. Glad to get some more Percy Jackson pods in the mix. Glad to finally meet you digitally. And maybe we'll meet in person when we all get invited to the TV show premiere, which I'm just...
Right.
Yes.
We're just keep putting it out.
Manifesting.
All the PJO podcasters getting invited. Just trying to manifest it as much as we can.
Right.
We'll make that happen.
Whoever gets the invite needs to bring everyone else as the plus one.
Right. Hello, can I have a plus 14?
Thank you so much.
Yeah, we'll have a pact where we all agree to be everyone. We'll all get everybody in.
In a trench coat.
Oh, yeah,
Yeah, there
that's
we
it.
go.
Yeah, we'll just get a really, really big trench coat. Yeah, there we go. No, I'm actually 30 feet tall. Anyway, thank you both so much for joining. Listeners, thanks for listening. And until next time, when we figure out why Zoe and Thalia hate each other and what is going on with Apollo, I'll see you later. Hey, thanks so much for listening to this episode of The Newest Olympian. This podcast is created, hosted, and produced by me, Mike Schubert. I also run the social media and the website. Our editor is Sherry Guo. The music is by Bettina Campamanes and Brandon Grugel, and the art is by Jessica E. Boyd. If you love the show, you cannot get enough of the show, you need some more, you can go to thenewestolympian.com/Patreon, and you can get access to more bonus episodes, monthly live streams, the Discord, so much fun stuff, all at thenewestolympian.com/Patreon. And speaking of the Patreon, I want to give a shout out to our producer level patrons: Lotta Bartova, Kelsey Gillespie, The Damn Steam Nuggets, Emma Cooey, Vicky Garcia, Ellie Houskovchova, Veronica Bartova, Haley Hastings, Robin Garcia, Frida Vikstrom, Megan Moon, Tough Bayfong, Moo Productions, Don't Call Me Nymphadora, Olivia Y, Craig McRoberts, Taylor Payne, Giselle Salvador, Minka Dreesen, Can't I Seaweed Brain, Matt Barger, Peter Johnson the Twin, Sabrina Balsiger, Bony Pony, Getting Stoned with Smelly Gabe, Heather McMillan, Casey Canales, Polly Burridge, Nikki Harris, Tatiana Schmidt, Sandra Rose, Bridget Lowry, Josh Sayer, Percy Blue, Josh Wilkie, Abby Ryan, Shannon Yvonne Aguilar, Wise Girl, Alpacas Are Hope, Milo TZ, Roxas 1912, Rafaela, Ashton Gabrielson, Cara Marin, Colby, Marco Redhouse, Falcon, Joey James, Christopher William Boucher, Justin Lux, Caden, Max, Sam, Ruby, Carly, Allen, Riley, Kiedis, Mary Kelly, Audra, Mackenzie, Mrs. O'Leary, Marina Foose, Aaron Wood, Tyler Hendricks, Molly Snyder, Rodith Kalna, and Milo Kim. Now, if you want to support the show, but in a non-monetary way, first you could follow us on social media. We're at Newest Olympian on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook. We also have a subreddit, reddit.com/r/TheNewestOlympian. And then you could talk about us on social media. That really helps. Word of mouth is really huge. Or you could leave a rating and review on whatever podcast app you're using. So Apple Podcasts or Spotify let you rate. If you want to rate us, leave a nice review. That's really nice. But honestly, the biggest thing, word of mouth. If you think of someone that would love the show, reach out to them directly and say, hey, there's this podcast, there's this guy, he's reading the Percy Jackson books for the very first time. I think you're going to like it. Here's a link to it. That is huge. All of these things help, and I'm appreciative to all of you who have done it or who will do it in the future. But I'm just so thankful you tuned into this episode, and I hope you tune into our next episode, which will be starring Dottie James as we cover Chapter 4 of The Titan's Curse. But until then, I'll pursue you later.